to what causes mental illness, the general consensus today is that we have a chemical imbalance in the brain. Now, when asking what caused that chemical imbalance, the general answer would be, we don't know, but it's there and we have to manage and treat it. However, what role does trauma play in the cause of mental illness? There was a couple of doctors back at the start of 2000s, I think. They were working in America, working with clients who were morbidly obese. They had a program in this hospital that they would take clients through where they would lose drastic amounts of weight. They would put them on vitamin IV, give them all the nutrients the body needs while being able to restrict their calorie intake in a controlled setting, and people would lose massive amounts of weight. One lady, we went from 408 pounds down to 132 pounds. These doctors were amazed. They said, we've cracked the obesity code. We know how to get people thin again. Yes, go us. What they found next was that the vast majority of these patients all put the weight back on. The lady who went from 408 pounds down to 132 started putting weight back on. She put 37 pounds on in the first 3 weeks and eventually went back to over 400 pounds faster than she lost it. The doctors then asked her, they said, what was going on? We cracked the code here about how to lose the weight. Why put the weight back on? She said, well, it started when I went into work at 132 pounds and an older man at work hit on me. He made a sexual advance on me and I immediately started eating from that point. The doctors then pressed her further and, well, why is that? And she revealed that she was sexually abused by her grandfather growing up between the ages of 10 and 21. Upon hearing this, the doctors started asking a lot more of these patients who were putting the weight back on about their lives growing up. And they found that 55% of the people in this program had some sort of sexual abuse when they were younger. The doctors then thankfully started listening to the patients and started delving more and asking about different other situations they had when they were growing up. They ended up finding a list of 10 different things which they ended up calling the adverse childhood experiences of things that have happened to us growing up before the age of 18. They ended up with a list of these 10 that became a questionnaire. So you basically had 10 questions of, did any of these things happen to you before you were the age of 18? So it was things like, were you sexually abused? Were you physically abused? Verbally abused? Was one of your parents a drug addict or alcoholic? Was one of your parents incarcerated? There was 2 categories of neglect, which is very, very important that was added, because a lot of trauma, we think of something that happened to us that shouldn't, which it is. But there's also another category of trauma of something that should have happened that didn't. And this is where neglect comes in. And neglect can often be more pervasive than other trauma because it can be harder to locate and find, yet it's just as damaging as this other stuff. So basically with this questionnaire, you would get a score of 0 to 10. That is your ACE, or Adverse Childhood Experiences score. The doctors then put this questionnaire in various clinics in their area. And so all the patient would have to do is fill out this questionnaire and then just have their normal appointment with the doctor. So at the end of surveying, I believe somewhere 17,000 to 20,000 people, so a very large data set, they were able to look at people's ACE score versus the outcomes that they were having and presenting with in these clinics. The results that they found were bloody astonishing. There was a direct correlation between your ACE score increasing and your increases of physical, mental, and emotional health. It was direct correlation. So your risk of cancer, your risk of heart disease, these things went up as your ACE score went up. But what I'm going to talk about today is obviously the mental health and addiction stuff. Get a load of these stats. For someone who has an ACE score of 5, so they answered yes to 5 out of the 10 questions, as opposed to someone who had a 0, your chance of getting depression as an adult goes up 500%. Now, if we found something that we were eating or something in the environment that we found increased our risk of cancer by 20%, it will be on the front page of the news, okay? We're talking an increase of 500% of getting depression as an adult. Your risk of becoming an alcoholic goes up 510%. Your risk of, with an ACE score of 5 compared to an ACE score of 0, your risk of becoming an IV drug user as an adult goes up 920%. And I'll give you one more. Your risk of attempting suicide as an adult with an ACE score of 5 compared to a 0, that risk increases by 1,680%. That's a drastic drastic increase, as with all of this stuff. I encourage you, if you want to research further, type in ACE study into Google and start to have a look at all the graphs and stats. They're quite incredible. So, does trauma play a role in the cause of mental illness? Clearly. Now, the two things I suppose you can take from this, well, one thing that these researchers found was that far more people had these ACE experiences than what they thought. They were actually quite common. So what can we take from these findings? We can take that when it comes to prevention, by this being more well known and this education getting out there of how these experiences affect our children as adults, we can start to change the way we interact with our children, which is going to prevent a lot of these outcomes happening. That will be a slow process, but information like this is very, very valuable when it comes to that. Now, when it comes to treating people, I think that we can be in a far more empowered position knowing that if I address my trauma, there is a very good chance that I may be able to get past my mental illness, my addiction, whatever it is I'm going through, because trauma can be healed. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There is hope, and there are different methods and methodologies out there that can help deal with trauma. And I think that's it's a much more empowered position to take than just saying I have a chemical imbalance which I don't know how it started and I'm just going to manage it. So, very important study, ACE, the Adverse Childhood Experiences. Very disturbing, but very enlightening. I encourage you to do a bit more research into it. That is all from me today. Have a beautiful day. I love you all. Peace out.